Welcome to the Market Mystics podcast. I'm Joshua.
I'm Kim. Let's dive in. Hey, everybody. Welcome
to
back.
The podcast.
We're laughing because, number one, we have limited time. Number two, we were talking about what we could possibly talk about. And I'm like, no, let's not do it. And he's like, just click record.
That's true.
So I just did. And here we are.
I think it's, we were reminiscing about our favorite decades in life. And Kim has recently transitioned to a new decade.
Okay, no. Listen. Right now, at the time of this recording, I'm enjoying the last day of my 30s.
That's true, but when it gets posted, it won't be.
I know, but listen, remember when we talk about like the historian,
yes,
the present person,
so
and then the futurist
ready too.
Right now, I'm being a present person, which doesn't happen all the time.
So you're getting ready to. And the reason I wanted her to hit record is because I have many times heard her say, my 30s have been my favorite time of life. And I think that's, first of all, I think that's amazing because at least in culture, it seems like the younger generations tend to value, your teens or your 20s. And you're like, no, like actually these years have been amazing. And like, I'm just curious what you're like, have you thought at all about like is your natural mindset, these years have been amazing, so the next 10 years are just going to build on that and be better, or is your natural mindset the like less positive,
like mourning the end of that?
right?
No, I have a pretty positive outlook. But I think it's kind of shifted throughout this decade. There's been a lot of I don't even know the word that you would call it, like unwinding and relearning, and like the whole journey that we talk about all the time. Like the majority of it has been in this decade for me. So in my 30s. And I can honestly look back and see where I started, which was not a bad place, and see where I've wound up. And it is such a completely different place. And I have a lot of the same people in my life. I live in the same city. I do have another child that I didn't have 10 years ago. But a lot of my circumstances are similar, and so many of them are completely different too. Like I transitioned out of being in like the corporate world and being an employee into being self-employed. And I transitioned out of what I would call like the church age and kind of more into the kingdom age. I transitioned out of going to someone to go to God for me and me going directly to him. Spiritually, things are so different. It's wild how different. I don't know. And then just within myself, I feel like in my 30s is when I really dug in and found out who I was, which is all still fairly new if you think about it that way. And so I'm kind of excited to see how that will grow and continue to reveal itself as I go into my 40s. And so I kind of expect my 40s to be even better. I don't think it has to be a downward slope. Right? Like a few weeks ago, probably longer than that now, we talked to Tommy Miller and to Michael King, and they were both talking a lot about immortality, being eternal, deathless, those concepts. And I've been on board with that for years now. And so I don't really buy into the whole, like, you've kind of expired at some point. And I don't really buy into the like, well, now it's all downhill from here. Like, I just don't buy it. And so I think there's a lot to look forward to as opposed to something to mourn. However, I am very grateful for the last 10 years.
Yeah. I think that's a great outlook. And I, my gut like thought is your outlook on your future should be positive, right? Like
Mhm.
it probably says something about your emotional or mental state if it's not positive. And if you're like, I think it's kind of weird. Like, yeah, you brought up Tommy and Michael, and we talked about immortality and life and abundant life. And if your expectation is death and decay, well, then it's no wonder that that's what happens. And
Yeah.
just your mindset on the future is and the current is so important. I was
Mm.
just before we started recording, I was having a conversation with my mom about like the importance of taking every thought captive and having positive thoughts, and like what are you creating, what are you thinking about. And I'm gonna like throw her under the bus. But she was telling me that today she tried, um, she was timing like 5 minutes. Can I just be totally in control of my thoughts for 5 minutes and not have a negative or a thought that I don't want for 5 minutes? And she said she had to do it several times. Like several times she had to like repeat the timer of 5 minutes because
Hmm.
she didn't make it. And but that like brought awareness to her of like okay, I can do this just little bits at a time, like adding some positive thoughts, being aware of what's running through my mind. What am I thinking about my past? What am I thinking about my current? What am I thinking about my future? And like I'm really excited. Like I know you said like so many things changed in the last 10 years, and I feel like that's probably likely going to be the same story that we have in 10 more years. Like,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, look where I was 10 years ago and look where I am now. Like, sure, there'll be some similarities, but I fully expect that there'll be differences. Maybe there'll be two more kids, who knows? But I think it'll be just like, I think I fully expect that there is like that much more change and excitement and life waiting around the corner.
Totally. Hey, I have a question for you.
Yeah,
You're a little earlier on in your journey through your 30s,
true.
but what's been your favorite age so far?
Uh, that's a good question. Um, there have been aspects of a couple different years that I've really enjoyed. My current year is probably one of my favorite years. Um, yeah, I mean, there's just a lot that's happened. Like I got married this year. I mean, technically last in my last age year, but this year, um, like there's there's also been like challenging moments in that, and that's how I kind of look at it. Like my other answer, like probably would have been like 27-ish, somewhere in that ballpark. um but it was also going through an extremely challenging time, but on the other hand, like having a lot of fun, like really enjoying work and really enjoying friends and things. um and so that's kind of tough because there's like, I would say my favorite years have also been paired with some really not enjoyable moments. And so it's hard to look and be like, that was the best one. I would say probably right now
That's
the one
funny.
I'm in is just because I'm really like, yeah, I just got married. Life's changing a little bit. There's a lot of fun pieces and parts to it.
Hmm. I like that though. It makes me go back to all this balance stuff that we've been talking about lately. You're like, there are all these really great times, but then sprinkled in with really bad times. And it just makes me think about, you know, how necessary it is to be able to see both sides, right, in any given time frame, and how helpful that can be to bring some balance, because it would also be really easy to be like, this was the worst ever. This was the worst. I hated it. Every moment was miserable. Except that if you can pick out those other times where, you know what, not everything was miserable.
Right.
You know, there really were some magnificent moments in there.
Yeah.
And vice versa. Like, I'm not gonna say I think it's bad to like always be happy or always have good times, because that's good. But sometimes it makes you really appreciate the better times when you also have some of the lower times, you know?
For sure. It really brings perspective to the situation.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing to me. I would say my 20s, like I did not mourn losing my 20s. That was like a rough decade for me. And so I was so happy to get into my 30s, but then 33 was my favorite. I don't even know what it was. I think that was kind of when big transitioning started spiritually for me. And then in that, like, just kind of getting a little more solid and like comfortable in my skin, I'd say. You know, I've talked about this often. I don't know about on the podcast, but I don't know, in real life. So maybe on the podcast, maybe not. Regarding identity, like, I spent all of these like 30 years. I always say this. I spent 30 years like trying to build my own identity. And then finally I started seeking the one who created me to tell me, like, who am I? Why was I created? Those things. And the shift that came with that was incredible. And I talked a little bit about it earlier, but it was like in my 20s, I was like fighting to be something that I thought I should be, right? That I've decided I should be, and that society has told me I should be. And I mean, even the church has told me I should be. I was never somebody who like fit that mold either. Like I always prayed different. My relationship with the Lord always looked different. Like, it just didn't look like everybody else's, but I still wanted to be like part of the whole. So there's always that rub, you know what I mean? And then finally, when I was able to kind of unzip out of that suit and just decide that I was going to be who I was, like who I was created to be, and I'll let that relationship flow however it needs to flow, and those things, man, the freedom that came with that was incredible. And it was right around 33 for me. And so that year, that's the one that I would say was my favorite, but it was just because it felt like freedom.
I love that.
Yeah, crazy.
Well, I'm really looking forward to the rest. Like I'm looking forward to the next, I don't know, evolution, growth, just next time period, because there's like, I just think there's life and freedom to be found in all of it. And does it mean that it's without stress or hard times? No, but that doesn't mean it's not fruitful and beautiful at the same time.
Totally agree. Here's to 40.
Here's the 40.
I'm not actually drinking. It was water. I have nothing left.
That's funny.
I'll drink some afterwards.
Thanks, guys, for joining us today. We'll see you next time.
Sounds good.
Thank you for sticking around. Listen for new episodes every Monday and Thursday. Find us on all social media platforms by searching for Market Mystics. Don't forget to follow and subscribe. Visit upperroomcd.com, where you can find more information about the hosts, projects, and guests. Go deeper by booking a coaching appointment focused on redefining identity and wealth in your life. See you next time.